So Jonny, first of all, thank you so much for willing to answer these questions for my clients. I'm really excited to make these into a video because it's questions and topics that personal trainers get a lot, which leads me into the first topic, and it can be kind of your intro of who you are too, is I want you to talk a little bit about what is nutrition coaching, because as personal trainers, I think society kind of makes an assumption that personal trainers can do it all. They're nutrition coaches, they're lifestyle coaches. A client even joked the other day, he goes, we expect you to even fix our relationship with our husband. Like, we expect you to do everything. And the naive, younger, less educated Lucy, I felt like I knew enough about nutrition. Like, yeah, read Wheat Belly. Oh, you're paleo? Good job. That's good. Because that's what I thought was good. And I've gotten to the point now where I can't even say anything. A client's saying something about nutrition and I just freeze. I'm like, I follow Jonny on Facebook or on Instagram. And I think the fact that I'm letting you present to my clients, I think is a big deal because I have really high standards. Yeah. So I want you to first go into who are you and what is nutrition coaching as a service?
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me on. I know of your standards from having followed you in the breathing mechanics space and pain space for a long time. And obviously I've had you on the podcast a couple of times, so value your opinion very highly. So for that to be made both ways, I feel honored. So thank you for that. In terms of nutrition coaching, so I myself was very much down the paleo wagon for a long time and had a bit of hit and miss experience with it when I was in the CrossFit space. And it was when I was still a bit overweight, I would say in comparison to CrossFit standards, definitely not in regular everyday standards, because the standards are very high. It led me down this whole avenue of, well, I need to find out more about this because this paleo thing, I'm not really agreeing with, both from an enjoyment level and from a level of, I've seen other people get results with other methods. So what's going on here? There has to be a kind of common theme here that people are following. And that led me down the route of finding out people like Alan Aragon and Eric Helms, James Krieger and Stefan Guillenet, who are all people who I would massively recommend following on social media, YouTube, all of those things as very highly rated evidence-based practitioners. By the by, it led me to do the precision nutrition certification around 5 or 6 years ago, just their level 1. And that was useful because they talked about the fundamentals of biochemistry, which I'd done at A-level anyway. And they talked about how it applied to nutrition and why there was such a dichotomy of opinion. That led me to, the more and more I looked into what was back then termed kind of like flexible dieting, the whole if it fits your macros approach. That led me to find more people in that space, notably a person called Martin McDonald, who has created something called Mac Nutrition University. And that's another sort of 1-year course where they give you the title of certified nutritionist. So I did that quite a few years ago now, and on board of that, I've now looked much more into behavior change and psychology, along with this whole, right, well, we know the fundamentals of nutrition, we know how that can apply to an individual, but now how can we get behind the mind, as it were, and talk about those psychological barriers that are holding them back from doing the things they probably know they should do. So with nutrition coaching, it's definitely, it's funny how you said PTs are, they're known to try and do it all. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think PTs generally should be very good generalists, because a lot of the time, your regular person walking through a gym, that's going to be their first contact with someone into fitness before they start to specialize. And so I think it is a worthwhile thing for PTs to know the ins and outs, at least the basics of knowing the whole, well, these are the fundamentals of nutrition in terms of what method you try. As long as you eat enough whole food, as long as you get enough fruit and vegetables, as long as you kind of account for your overall calories and don't eat like a child 100% of the time, and pay attention to your lifestyle as well, things are going to be okay. And if you want more specific help in terms of behaviors, maybe that's then when you refer out, right? Nutrition coaches in the beginning, I think, were very much here's a meal plan, or here's a set of macros for you to follow. Have fun with that. Let me know how it goes. Track all your food and then you'll get results. That's definitely where I started from. because that's where I had had help in the past and what worked for me. Quickly realized that clients aren't me. And I needed to broaden my scope of practice, which led me down that behavior change line of, well, actually now we need to be consulting with people quite regularly over video call or in person, and helping them with their behaviors and their habits in a systematic and simple way that they can apply to their everyday life. So what we do as nutrition coaches is sit down with a person for a good hour or so, find out everything we can about their lifestyle in terms of their work, their habits at home, what their relationship with food is like, both from their upbringing and their what they believe presently, what their current beliefs are in terms of food. We find out more about their personality, so whether they're extroverted, introverted, whether they're numbers based or more process based, because that will dictate the method that we would use with clients, or at least offer them. And then it becomes a very collaborative process of saying, right, okay, based on where you are right now, based on what your goals are, there's a line that we can draw here from A to B, but we need to start you here at A, which is where you're at. And we need to say, okay, what's the next thing that we can do? And we come up with what we call low-hanging fruit, which would be the things that can be probably the quickest and easiest change for quite a good result. But before offering any suggestion, we do offer that to the client, and we say, look, based on what we think, where you are right now, we would probably recommend we start with this. How does that sound? And it becomes a very collaborative process of, I'm not going to tell a client to stop drinking lattes, for example, if they only have a latte once every mid-morning and they have it with their mates and it's a really nice social community thing for them to do, and to take that away would actually drastically affect their quality of life. So it'd be like, okay, well, there's calories in it, but doesn't matter. Like, let's use weight loss for an example, because it's quite a common goal. We can look at then doing other things in the day that are going to make a bigger difference to their overall energy intake, whether that be maybe moving a bit more, or taking some food away from another place, or taking food away isn't something we massively like to do. It's much more of a case of how can we influence your food decisions to add more of the stuff we know we should be eating, rather than like taking away and restrict, because we know that can lead to negative behavior patterns down the line. So I hope in a roundabout way that kind of gives you a scope of what nutrition coaching is and what we do.
No, it does. Thank you. So it sounds like it's just very tailored to the person that you have in front of you. I can even like sense the uncertainty of like, well, I don't want to say exactly what we do because it's so different for everybody. Not everybody fits that same like formula that I think a lot of people are looking for. But you did mention, I like that you said personal trainers do need to be generalists. They need to know enough about nutrition to help their clients get the basics. And it's funny you said that, because that's what we try to do. We try to learn enough about sleep. What are the basics of sleep? What are the basics of nutrition? And Dave and I built the gym as if all the experts got together, and if they all got to decide on like, what are the basic things we want our clients to do, what would that be? And one of those things that Dave and I came up with was mindfulness.
Yeah.
Like, that is something that we can help our clients do by getting them to meditate, meditation challenges. We created a mindful movement course. And I think you mentioned behavioral change and mindfulness, how those two come together, and really you need one to make the other one work. You need mindfulness to make behavioral change work. Can you go into like, what's your process with that, or your ideas behind mindfulness?
Yeah, it's a great question, because although we don't have a generic one size fits all approach, because they don't work, right? You've worked with people before that are like, I'm this really buff personal trainer, and for me, it works for me to eat all of my meals out of Tupperware and eat 6 of them a day and cook all my food in advance. And therefore, client, I'm going to give you a meal plan that does that exact same thing for you, because that's what worked for me. And then the client's like, I hate my life right now. I'm not doing this. But they have that perception of that's what healthy eating is, which it's not at all, right? Healthy eating can be summed up as eat real food, not too much, mostly plants. Doesn't mean that having the occasional bit of chocolate or the occasional burger or pizza or whatever is necessarily bad for you. We don't believe in bad foods in and of themselves. You've got to look at the overall context of a diet, right? If you're eating a lot of fruits and vegetables, a lot of lean meats, fish, dairy, or a lot of plants, again, if you're vegetarian, vegan, you should be eating a lot of plants as an omnivore anyway. And then you have a pizza or a burger every now and then, you're going to be very healthy. Where mindfulness comes in, that's one of the key points that we talk with our clients about as well. Because if you're not mindful about your current behavior, you have no hope of building new behavior. It is as simple as that. And the world that we live in right now is so rushed and so built around instant gratification that it makes fitness quite hard to get people to buy into, because you've got TVs, you've got apps, you can drive everywhere, and life is getting simpler and simpler by the moment, that our activity levels are just kind of plummeting down and down and down and down, because our life is being made easier by the second by technology. Not only that though, because we have work, we have kids, we have adult responsibilities, life is so rushed that food and fitness kind of become an afterthought. And a lot of the time people eat not because they're actually hungry or they need food. They eat because it's their routine. They're like, right, we'll get up and we'll have that because we always have that at this time. And we'll get to the office and I'll have this because I always have this at this time. And you get lunch, and then around 3 o'clock, you get the afternoon munchies because it just happens to everyone. And then you hate yourself because you're craving sugar and you don't know why, but you can't seem to get those cookies out of your head. And then you have a few of them, you feel guilty, you then go home and have dinner. That maybe then turns into another evening snack, but it's all mindless. It's all routine. And it's like going to the cinema and having popcorn while watching your film, right? You don't actually taste it. You don't realize it's like 10 days old and stale and doesn't actually taste nice, but you're at the cinema, so you have popcorn anyway, because that's what you do. And what we need to do is we need to start rewiring ourselves and thinking, well, if we can live very, very much in the moment and think very consciously about our behaviors around food, like, am I hungry right now? Yes or no? And if no, it's challenging that, well, do I want to eat now? Because I know that if I don't eat now, I don't get another opportunity, and that'll make me hungry, agitated, moody, and whatever, because then it's a good decision to. But if you're only eating then because it's a routine, and actually you could probably not eat then and wait until you were hungry, maybe that's the better choice. Similarly with cravings, we use craving diaries and thought journals with our clients to ascertain, well, when are you craving something, and why? Is there a certain thing that's linked to that? Is it because you're bored at work? And so your reaction when you're bored is to grab a couple of biscuits or to grab some chocolate to kind of keep you busy? Or is it because you're highly stressed and you're turning to that food to get the dopamine response it brings you to make you feel a bit better? Similarly with being emotional or upset, are you turning to food as a comfort for those things? Or are you lonely and bored? A lot of the time in the evening or weekends, that's why people relax with food, because actually they're just sat in front of the TV and they don't have anything else to do. So we're very hot on getting our clients to challenge their thoughts, which is something that's used in cognitive behavior therapy. This idea of, okay, you have these thoughts around this food or around this action. Let's challenge those. Why do you feel that way? Why do you think that way? Is there a better way to reframe that and think about it in a different way that provides a different action? Because then you can start to rewire that habit. If we have a habit, it's usually due to a cue, which provides us a craving. That provides the response, and then we get a reward. When it comes to food, the reward is the good feeling you get from eating high calorie food. We can all tell that if we ate chocolate or pizza or whatever tastes great, we feel good. And that's what creates that habit loop. We need to rewire that somehow and think, well, having those foods in and of themselves aren't bad. If you really, really wanted them and it was the right moment to have them, I absolutely think you should have them, because if you forbid yourself food or restrict, you're going to want them more. But it's knowing that difference between the craving and actually really desperately wanting that food. And if it's the craving, you've then got to think, what is another action I can do that's going to make me feel good and help me retrain that habit? So it might be doing some mindful breathing or mindful exercises when you feel a craving, or it might be taking a break from your desk and getting some fresh air and grabbing a drink of water, or it could be playing a short game on your phone or on your laptop or something similar to make you feel a little bit happier and a little bit more amused. And then you're like, right, cool, I've had a break from work now, gonna crack back into it. And so it's just analyzing what the mindless moments of a client's journey are and trying to make them more mindful. And you can approach meal times the same way. A lot of people eat meals in front of TVs or in front of laptops, and that just leads to really fast eating, really mindless eating, not knowing when they've had enough or what they're actually eating and putting into their bodies. So getting clients to actually say, look, you can definitely take 5 to 10 minutes to close your laptop and have your lunch without having a distraction in front of you. And just that simple act of doing that, to say, just slow down for today with your lunch, chew your food, taste it, enjoy it. And when you've had enough, just feel free to stop, because you can save it for later if you need to.
I love everything that you just said. How do you go about with clients explaining that this is very process oriented versus you're going to feel results right away? You're going to wake up tomorrow and feel different. Because I don't have experience with getting coached this way with nutrition. And we've talked about this on the podcast, but I have similar experiences with my own depression, anxiety, with thoughts changing my behaviors. And it's been a year and a half and I've never been happier. I've never felt healthier, but it's reflecting back of, wow, I've changed so much in a year, but I never felt that I woke up and I felt different, or,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? It's a process versus you're going to wake up tomorrow and feel totally different if you do this for one day.
Yeah, and that, I think that's the hardest thing with nutrition, because even with fitness, you can get someone into a workout and give them a great workout and they feel great because they have that dopamine release, don't they, from working out? Which is why I kind of mentioned the whole, like, going for a quick walk outside might be your response to having a craving. It's kind of the same way that people get to stop smoking and things like that. It's replacing that action with something else that still makes them feel good. Nutrition, it's a lot harder to buy into because, again, we live in this world of instant gratification. And if you have a day where you wake up and you eat mindfully and you pay attention to your hunger and appetite cues and you avoid the overeating in the evening because you don't actually need to do it, and you go to bed feeling great, the next day you're not going to wake up like being like, 6 pounds lighter. It's just not going to happen. And there was a book I was reading about change where it talked about these 5 cycles of change, right? Where you've got this like optimism up here, where when you start, because you're like, right, I'm going to make all these changes, it's going to be great, and it instantly plummets into a valley of despair. Is literally the term they called it, where you're doing all of this hard work, but you're not actually seeing any progress yet, because it takes the time to see the results. And then if you plow on, you reach that high emotion over here of, I am this changed individual, as you said there, like I feel great, but wow, what a process it took me to get there. That you kind of got to buy into that with nutrition. The way that I talk with my clients about it is, hey, you've done these strict meal plans in the past, or you've counted all your calories in the past, and you've gotten quick results, and you're here sat in front of me now. So, did that work for you? Yes or no? And they'll be able to say, right, well, yeah, it worked for me in the short term, but in the long term, I didn't actually change my mindset around food. I didn't change my behaviors. I didn't change my beliefs. And it's led me back to square one or worse of where I am. So you can kind of get a bit of buy-in straight away from them. What I like to do is, and we do it as coaches at Next Step Nutrition, is we use habit tracking as a bit of that instant gratification. So we have a client-only app where people can log in daily and go, right, my habit today is to do this. And when they check it in, we've got everyone in the group on the app, and it pings a notification to everyone else in the group saying, hey, this person's just checked off their habit today and they've done this, or they've just gone on a 20-minute walk, or this person's just done their first workout, give them a high five. And you can like celebrate each other, add emojis, all these things. And it's using that gamification of habit coaching to tie people into that process of, hey, look at how far I've come. I started working with Next Step Nutrition and I was sedentary. I was eating no vegetables whatsoever. I felt terrible every day. And now I'm eating 2 portions of veggies a day. I'm walking for 20 minutes a day. And I feel better because I can see that progress, and I can feel that like change in vitality. So it's just changing people's mindset around what does progress mean to you. And if it is something on the outcome around the scale, we're good enough to know that if someone does enough things, we could potentially get them a certain outcome per week or per month. But we do say, look, there's so much variety in your scale weight that it becomes almost pointless to track it, especially if they're weight training as well. So it becomes much more of a thing of, let's focus on the way you feel and your habits rather than the the number on the scale that doesn't actually mean anything. It's just your gravitational pull to the earth.
You put the reward on the process, the
Yeah.
walking, the vegetables. I like that. I'll just rewatch this recording and just repeat word per word what you say in our consultations, even with your accent too. but it's perfect, even with fitness too. That's what we try to get people to understand as well, is when getting out of pain or getting stronger, it is that slow progress, but you do get that instant gratification through the workouts.
Yeah.
Well, this brings me to my next big question that I know even personal trainers wish they had like an elevator response to it, is extremism in our world is real.
Yeah.
And it's definitely real in the nutrition world. And from what I've learned from other nutrition experts is you can take one study and both opposite sides can use the study against each other.
Yeah.
And now we have all this confusion. Is fat bad? High fat, you can just eat whatever you want, low carb. So when clients talk about these extreme diets where they restrict things, and even medical professionals, I just had a client whose doctor said, cut out all sugar, start eating
Yeah.
vegetables in all your meals. She wasn't eating vegetables in her meals. And it's just like all this change. What is your thought on that?
Yeah, it's tough because extremism is real. And if you want, Lucy, like I've mentioned a few names of people that I follow and have talked with before. There's another guy, and I can send you a full list of names for your clients' notes and things as well. There's another guy called Alan Flanagan who I've had on the podcast a couple of times. He's the science communicator for a podcast called Sigma Nutrition Radio. And if you're into really geeky conversations around nutrition science, I'd highly recommend signing up to it, because Danny Lennon, his podcast is amazing, and someone who I followed for a long time. Now, Alan, because he's so heavily into research, he's even got a subscription service now where he breaks down research into bite-sized chunks, like a bit of a research review, and helps people understand research. And he's really good at that on his Instagram stories as well. And he's Irish, so his accent's far better than mine. We were having a chat just this morning, actually, because of some recent papers around vegan diets. And it's funny how if you have one person interpret those studies, it would be like, well, everyone should eat a vegan diet, because they compared a whole food plant-based diet to the standard American diet. And I said, well, the instant hole already is that if you look at your standard American diet, it's very similar to the standard British diet. So don't think I'm hating on you guys over there, but it's very processed, very laden in junk food, transaturated fatty acids, and a lot of not very many vegetables and all those things, right? And added sugars. Whereas the plant-based whole food diet is loads of fiber, loads of real whole foods, and very little of the former. There's going to be obvious health improvements there that aren't necessarily tied to the fact that this person isn't vegan. They're just eating too much junk food and not eating enough plants and eating too much added sugar. So when you look at nutrition, we're taught the hierarchy of evidence, right? The very bottom of evidence papers you get would be things like Petri dish studies and observational studies. Observational studies being, let's look at a population and look at their trends based on their diet average trend, and say, right, according to this, these people die at this age, they roughly eat this kind of food, and therefore that's the observation. At the very top of the study pyramid, you have something that called a randomized clinical trial, a randomized control trial, and you also have meta-analyses, which are massive reviews of all of the evidence of a certain area. So what we like to do when we're in the evidence-based community of nutrition is say, well, what can we tell from the randomized control trials, because they're the very best studies, and what can we tell from the meta-analyses that are overviews of the studies in a certain area of literature. The thing with extremism is that they go, we have these 3 studies here that prove this, and the other side will go, well, we have these 3 studies over here that prove the exact opposite of what you're saying, and you just get that constant bashing of heads. And that's how newspapers are written, it's how Netflix documentaries are written, and it just creates a plethora of confusion, a huge echo chamber of discussion that no one can work their head around, which is why you have people thinking, is fat bad? Is it good? You know, should I go vegan? Should I not? And what do I do? So, and honestly, being a regular person looking into nutrition now, I don't blame people for being confused out of their minds, which is why I created the company, right, to try and keep it simple. My simple standpoint on it, because you're going to find it hard to read research if you're not used to reading research, and it's going to be a long rabbit hole to go into. But there are meta-analyses out there that are recent that analyze evidence of literature when it comes to nutrition, and the general consensus we have is that your energy balance, so your energy in, energy out, which will be determined by many different factors, not just the food you eat and the amount of exercise you do. It's a whole other thing like genetics, behaviors, all those things. It's a very complex wagon, but that controls your overall body weight level. The amount of protein you eat per day will determine your muscle mass. So if you don't eat enough and you're not training, you're not going to put muscle mass on. If you are training, excuse me, sorry, and you eat enough protein, then you're going to be hopefully putting muscle mass on. That's great. When it comes to the amount of carbs and fats you eat per day, it's not really that important all that much. We need fats for health, so fat is a good thing for us to have. We don't need carbohydrates for health necessarily, but they do have very healthful qualities. Things like dietary fiber come from carbohydrates as well. So if you're looking to optimize your gut health, because that is a very popular topic, you should be eating a diverse amount of plants per week. And a lot of experts say that up to kind of 20 to 30 grams, maybe more of fiber per day would be a great target for people looking to really optimize that and getting as much variety as they can across a week. That's quite a large target to start with, right? Which is why we start small and build people up to it. But I'm just talking of like optimal lifestyle here. In terms of fats, there is a huge amount of trans fats and saturated fats in the average person's diet, particularly in the Western world. Saturated fat in its purest form isn't necessarily bad. It's just when we have a skewed ratio of not getting a lot of unsaturated fat compared to a lot of saturated fat. So saturated fat from dairy and animals mostly, and your unsaturated fat comes from your oily fish, your nuts, your seeds, your oils, avocados, those kind of foods. So if we want to optimize our fat profile, it's just eating a few more of these and a few less of these just to get a balance. That's as far as you really need to go with it. And in summary on that, eat mostly real food, mostly plants as much as you can, get a good amount of protein, and especially if you're weight training and you're doing enough then with food. If you want to go a bit lower carb because you prefer high fat foods, you go do that. The Mediterraneans do that to great effect. They have quite a high fat, low carb diets. But if you prefer carbohydrate based foods and you're not a massive fan of fatty based foods, that's fine. Still try to get in some oily fish or at least supplement with omega-3 because it's really helpful for you. But hey, have a higher carb diet and a lower fat diet and just control for your overall calories as best you can. And you're going to be a healthy individual, because we have the data to show that people can live years and years of their life without following any extreme dietary pattern. And the blue zones showed us that. They have drastically different diets. One of them has 80% of their calories coming from potatoes. Another have most of their calories coming from really high fat foods. Yet in all of these populations, we have people living to 100 and over because they eat real food and they also have high amounts of purpose. They live in really, really great communities where they have a purpose in that community all the way through until death. They don't really retire because it's not a thing. They just have that purpose through community and they work with the community and on the land. They get plenty of sunlight. They get plenty of exercise. And they don't eat a lot of heavily processed foods. So as much as there aren't any bad foods out there, we like to give people a paradigm of 80-20 and think if you have 80% of your food coming from whole food locations and 20% of your food is from the other stuff, the fun stuff, the flexible stuff, whatever you want to call it, then you're going to be in a great place.
That was really good. I understood everything that you said.
Great.
I
I'm
don't know
glad.
about you. I'm sure Jocelyn agrees. I thought that was very helpful. Very simple. It made sense to me. Nice job.
Thanks.
Yeah, the fact that I understood it all and never went over my head is really good. And,
Yeah,
huh?
I was going to say no problem. That's what we try. That's what we try to do. We try to just break it down as much as we can.
Yeah, which brings me to my last part is because I don't do nutrition coaching. I do
Mm.
try to push the needle in that direction by doing things like little workshops and having someone like you on, meditation challenges, like basic skills that I know people like you would love their clients to have. But who do you work with, and is it possible to work with you since you're not in this country or in
Yeah,
Kentucky?
yeah, not anywhere near you guys over here in the UK. Yeah, well, we work with our clients across the globe, and so we do have a couple of American clients. We have clients over in Dubai, Australia, as well. I actually travelled Australia a few years ago while working with clients because we use Zoom. We use Zoom to have our consultations with our clients, and we use the client app for our daily habit coaching, our instant messaging, and for our weekly check-ins and stuff as well. So we have a one-to-one service where we do heavily rely on consultations, right? We'll have a 1 hour consultation up front, which is a free consultation based on when a client signs up, because you sign up for an initial of 3 months. And then you have a call either every other week or every week, or you can even go up to twice a week should you feel like you needed to. So we've got 3 tiers there. And yeah, I'm not personally taking on clients, but I have a coach called Sean, who is educated all the way up to the same as my level. He's actually a previous client of mine as well, which is why I trust him more than anyone to bring him on board, because he knows exactly the way that we work. Really great guy. And yeah, we're both doing a 1-year mentorship right now on behavior change, motivational interviewing, and change psychology when it comes to nutrition coaching, which is giving us really great scope with the work we're doing with our clients. So he is available to work with. If your clients do want to get in touch with us for that reason, they can just send me an email, and you can get them over my email for that, and I can send them over the list. If you didn't want to go one-to-one and you kind of wanted to dip your toe in the waters, we're starting a program on Monday, which we've called Bulletproof Your Habits, which is an 8-week habit-based group program. So it'll be run through the app, but you won't have that direct contact to us. You'll have the contact to us through the group, in the group setting on the app. But you get a new habit every week. You get a daily email which is linked to that habit, and the email is educational but also psychology based. So we have a lot of actions in the emails, like we talk a lot about that thought challenging and being mindful, writing things down, following behavior awareness sheets, those kind of things, to really get a systematic 8-week approach through mindful eating at the start, to let's look at building a solid meal step by step. And then we look at things like steps, activity, and sleep. But we don't just say, hit this step target or get this amount of sleep. We're like, how can we help you be more active through the day and build this as a behavior? How can we help you get more sleep in the night? And how can we build that as a behavior? Because oftentimes just saying, hey, sleep 8 hours a night, it's as useful as saying to someone, hey, just stop smoking. You're like, thanks for that, buddy. Really doesn't help me whatsoever. Whereas if we can give you a step-by-step thing of saying, hey, okay, if you want this many hours of sleep, let's look at your pre-bed routine. Let's look at setting that up for success, and let's look at what that success looks like for you. Of course, it's group-based, so that's email-based for them to work on themselves. But that gives you an insight to then how we would work with you one-on-one, where we would give you much more help and accountability each week to reach those goals.
That's great. And how often will you be running the app thing, the group thing?
The group. So we're starting. So it's the first time we've run it. So
Okay.
it's a little experiment for us, because it's taken a while to write all the content and build it up. We're gonna, because it's 8 weeks long. I think we could run it every 2 to 3 months with that. Get the group in, get them on the way, work with them, get them cooled down, take the feedback, improve it, and then relaunch it. So we'll probably look to, because we're starting on Monday. It's quite close, obviously. That'll run just before Christmas, and then we'll look to. We'll probably run the next one in January, because that's the time when anyone changes, right? So, but one-to-one coaching, we've got spots available now with Sean if people were interested on diving in early or getting that one-to-one help.
Cool. So one-on-one coaching, the app starts on Monday. And if people are just not ready for that, tell us a little bit about your podcast, because it is geared towards general pop people, right? Learning.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Yeah, thank you. All the plugs, Lucy. I appreciate it. Yeah, the Next Step Espresso podcast, which you yourself have been a two-time guest on. We have a Friday episode with a guest usually, which is long form, which is more about breaking down maybe a complex topic into simple bite-sized chunks, but delving a lot deeper into it. The daily episode from Monday to Thursday is like 5 to 10 minutes long, solo show from me, and it's very geared towards change psychology and habits, as opposed to just telling people information about nutrition. There's a bit of that in there. We did an episode just today about talking about studies that showed, intermittent dieting studies, which was quite interesting. But most of the time it's talking about, hey, how can we overcome feeling guilty about food, and how can we build habits that last without getting bored, and how do we stay consistent, and all of those kind of things which people really struggle with. So that's called Next Step Espresso. You can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts. So if that interests you, definitely get it listened to. If you're more of a reader, that podcast gets turned into a blog daily. So if you go to nextstep-nutrition.com and hit the blog button, you'll be able to read. There's tons of blog articles on there as well. So you could literally search by goal in the category and read to your heart's content if you're more of a reader.
Cool. Thank you.